Thanks for joining us today. My name is John Nelson, and I am joined with Anna Simmet. She is the editor of Biodiesel Magazine, Biomass Magazine, and Pellet Mill Magazine. And we are doing our podcast for the Biodiesel and Renewable Diesel Summit. And our guest today is Dave Collings, senior consultant from 1898 and Company. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and so we're going to run through a few questions, but you will be featured in our panel on Wednesday, June 15th at the Biodiesel and Renewable Diesel Summit, and the panel is called Early Thoughts on Keeping Pace with Feedstock Demand as Renewable Diesel and SAF Production Grows. So we're excited to have you here, and I'm going to hand it off to Anna and have her ask a few questions.
All right. Thanks so much, John. Hi, Dave. Thanks for joining us today. I think a good starting point would be, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, 1898 and Company, and what you do there?
Okay. Well, I'm 22 years. My background is oil, gas, and chemicals. I focus mostly in the oil refining area, but because of the energy transition, I've been spending a lot more time the past 5 years or so focused on topics in the energy transition, such as CO2 capture, aviation fuel, renewable diesel, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, those sort of things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're going to be presenting at the Biodiesel and Renewable Diesel Summit, and I was reading your abstract for your presentation. Sounds really interesting. So I just kind of pulled out a couple talking points for questions. And, it's no secret that the SAF and bio-based diesel markets are exploding. Seems like we're always seeing new projects pop up. However, there are concerns of feedstock constraints, which you're going to mention in your presentation. So could you just talk a little bit about the current market demand and projected feedstock availability?
Yeah, so sure. So just to give you a little background about my company before I roll into that, I'm part of Burns & McDonnell. We're a company of about 10,000 people. I'm in the consulting group of about 250 or so. And between the consulting group and the engineering group, we have seen quite a bit less interest in basic renewable diesel that, really started picking up, I would say, 3 years ago or so. And in sometime in the past year, it started to tail off. And we think it started to tail off because of, one, we've seen the prices and they've gone way up, and we think that the prices have gone way up because of the lack of feedstock. Mm-hmm. And SAF, as far as that's going forward, we see the bulk of SAF, at least initially, coming from triglycerides. And, it comes back to the same problem. Where's the feedstock?
Right. And so it seems really appropriate that this summit is being held at the Fuel Ethanol Workshop, as ethanol may be able to play a role in increasing feedstock availability, which you're going to talk about in your presentation. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to change my tune a little bit and taking a step back and more broadly said that the corn is more of a feedstock, possibly a better feedstock than soybean oil in terms of going forward. Corn compared to soybean oil is quite a bit more prolific. It's on a bushel basis maybe 3 to 5 times as large, and so you've got a lot more feedstock potentially available. You've also have in the ethanol world this declining market for gasoline. Ethanol is quite tied to gasoline, and they're anytime in any company you want to be in a growth area. So the growth strategy for ethanol has basically been E15 in the past few years at least. And what this does is it presents another outlet for them. So it's kind of a good marriage.
Right. Really
And
interesting.
and of course,
go ahead.
just going a little further, the ethanol to jet is something that's out there that has been advertised more heavily, I would say, in the past couple of years. And sustainable aviation fuel has been a big buzzword the last year or so. And what's interesting about that process is there's parts of that process, or all parts of that process, have been commercially proven, really not together at scale, but each of the individual processes have been out there a while. And so that's what I think makes it interesting, is that it doesn't have a big hurdle to get to in order to move on and become another feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel, and to a lesser degree renewable diesel.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm really looking forward to your talk. Before we move on to our last question, which we kind of try to keep kind of fun, anything else you want to say about your presentation?
Sure. For more than one entity out there now, we've put a business case together, and that business case is similar to renewable diesel, in that you have to stack credits in order to get there. It was a combination. What made renewable diesel go was a combination of the blender's tax credit, the LCFS program in California, and the RINs program. Those three stacked together, B4 RINs in particular, those three stacked together are what made renewable diesel take off. Separately, and then some pretty significant advantages over FAME biodiesel there as well. For ethanol, we can only look forward to what it could look like, and we see a similar strategy. Is that it's a stack credits. It's LCFS program, it's RINs. Both of those, we have companies out there that are seeking pathways. And then separate from that, there's the SAF credit that failed last year in the Build Back Better bill, but now is looking like it's got some new life.
Okay. Thanks so much. I guess my last question for you is, as you mentioned, you have decades of experience in oil and gas. You've worked for companies like BP, and now you're helping your clients navigate the energy transition. So in doing this, what would you say is the most motivating or rewarding or favorite part of what you do?
Well, I think, coming out of the oil and gas world, if you go back 5 years, things looked a little dark and gloomy, in that there didn't seem to be a viable pathway. And now with renewables and the programs that are out there, I've been able to piece together in my mind a way forward for the industry. It is going to be quite challenging for the oil and gas industry to transform, and there are so many new developments out there, and some old ones that are gaining steam, and there's more support in the policy space too.
Right. Good answer. Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up with that. I look forward to seeing you next month in Minneapolis. And thanks so much for joining us today, Dave.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.